Today I'm going to show you how to multiply your damage by 5 to 10 times on any weapon, going over some of those additional stats like critical rate and critical chance, when you should build them, when you shouldn't, and when to focus on something else. Just before the video starts, if you please hit that like and subscribe button, join all those people who are supporting me. We are flying up, we're almost at 300, we're pushing up, we blew past 250, we blew past it, we don't even have a video out the last couple of days and we've still been growing. Mental to me. So please join them, hit subscribe, hit the like button, help me get to 300 subs and I will love you for a long time. So we'll test out normally. How much does my Thunder Cage do? It is level 100, it does have some pretty good rolls on it. We've already seen the Thunder Cage build, but right now we're running no mods at all. Now, with it running no mods, it still has 120k DPS, right? We're still going to end up getting much higher numbers. So see that? We're getting 60k, 20ks, 20ks. There's a couple of 60k's in there. The 20k, 24,000 is weak point damage, and when it crits it goes up to 66,000. Now if we just shoot normally, we do about 19,000. What if I shoot in the leg? We're doing about 14,000 damage down there. So 14,000, we'll do 24,000, and then we can do 60,000. That's the sort of numbers you're looking at with a base level gun. In order for you to actually know how to build your gun, you're going to want to come into the info page, right? Things you don't really need to pay too much attention to while you're building your weapon will be things like your firearm attack, your fire rate, your rounds per magazine. You know, they are all going to be mods you use anyway. You know, you're always going to want to increase your fire attack, you're always going to increase your fire rate, but what you really want to have a look at is the critical firearm rate and the critical damage. At base level, the Thunder Cage has a 20% crit and a 2 times crit damage. For a general scale of things, if your weapon has less than 20% crit, it's not really a crit weapon. Now, if it has, say, like 15% crit and it still has a 2 times crit multiplier, or like a 2.3 times crit multiplier, you can definitely use it for crit. You know, that's still fine. That's not going to cause you any issues, really. The only thing that's going to cause you some issues is that if you don't have a big crit multiplier and you have a low crit rate, it's not really going to be a crit weapon. For example, let's go into settings number 2, we'll equip that. And then we'll go to F1. So for example, right, the Tamer, it only has a 10% base crit chance and it only has a 1.6 base critical damage. That is not anywhere close enough for me to call this a crit weapon. You don't have anywhere good enough high critical rate. Even when you put as much crit mods on it, it's not going to reach the same potential. It's always going to be half the critical chance of the Thunder Cage, because its base is half. All those mods that multiply it are always going to end up half the critical rate, because if you put the same, they're both light ammo weapons, they both have the same amount. I kind of give up on my Tamer, to be quite honest. I was using it like this. I was doing weak point damage, I wasn't doing crit, but I have literally never had an energy activator drop, so I can't build multiple weapons right now. I'm trying to get one, I just can't get one. It's so tough. So we'll come back to our Thunder Cage, right? Obviously, we're building it for crit. Now, my Thunder Cage has an energy activator, it has a module capacity up. I'm just teaching you how to do it. You can get these 2. You get 2 free energy activators. Don't do what I did. Don't use it on Friday. When we're coming down to what we want to mod this for, right? Let's search for firearm attack. That's it. Right, we'll search firearm attack. Right, here's all your firearm attack mods. You'll notice they have firearm critical, attack. The things at the bottom of your mods are the mod type, right? Or something like that. But you can only have one mod type of each equipped. Okay, so for example, right, rifle reinforcements has nothing at the bottom, so we'll put that on. That automatically increases us up by 30,000. We'll put on action reaction. It's a very good mod. It is attack, right? So now we've got our 2 attack mods on. Action reaction, it's quite a strong mod. Let's see, what does the leg shot get us? 26 damage, right? So we're almost doubling our damage. We're doing 43,000 and 111,000, so we're doubling our damage right now. It's 2 times damage with only 2 mods, right? That's why you're best maxing out mods, even if your gun doesn't look like mine. It doesn't have an energy activator, it doesn't have 7 crystallization catalysts. Those 2 mods, they still make a big difference. We'll have a couple more firearm attack mods and fire rate mods. These are just the general ones you would use on your build. Here is a mod, this one's questionable, right? Something like edge and shot. You get 43% additional firearm hit rate and you get negative 15% firearm attack. Now, where this is going to make your biggest difference, if we have a look again, right now, our firearm attack, right, is 12,400. Am I willing to lose 15% of 12,400? No difference. It still says 12,400, but what's going to change is the damage per bullet. So 12,000 damage per bullet, I'm willing to lose 15% of my firearm attack. So a mod like this, where you get critical hit rate and you lose firearm attack, is going to be worth it on a gun like the Thunder Cage or any high crit weapons. This would be worth it. Now, if you have a high crit sniper, you don't really want to use a mod like this because you're only hitting one shot at a time. You need both your firearm attack and your firearm critical rate. So just, if you're using a heavy hitting weapon, you don't want to lose any firearm attack. But for a gun like a Thunder Cage or a Python, something that's low damage, SMG, you can use this and not worry about that 15% negative firearm attack. It's only going to be a benefit to your gun because the more criticals you can hit with a lot of bullets, the much better off you're going to be. We'll test it out. We've got 2 mods on now. What are we going to go up to? 32,000 damage on the leg, 110,000 damage on the head. Damage isn't going to change, but what is going to change is how many crits you actually hit, right? That's the big thing. We're going to shoot a lot faster, we're going to hit a lot more crits. That's what's going to make the big difference for you there. Those 2 mods they're not going to make too much of a difference in your actual DPS, right? I take that off. It looks like my DPS is going to go up, right? If I put anything on in replacement to that, if I just take it off completely, nothing changes at all. So you may be thinking, well, why would you use that if it doesn't increase your DPS? This number is basically irrelevant. A 500k Thunder Cage sometimes can get beat by a 250k Python because of the other stats. Your DPS doesn't really indicate how well that you're going to do. We've got our damage mod, we've got our fire rate mods on. We've got a critical mod on. Now, we do still want some other criticals. Let me see, what do we have here? We have critical hit rate, we'll get that on too. And we have critical damage, we'll get that on too, right? 2 more mods, we'll test out how that went. We were doing 110 damage on the head, we were doing 40ks. Oh, look at that. Already, you've seen that we hit a crit down here for 102k. We're hitting 32,000 damages. 40,000 weak points, not going to change. Those 2 mods added an extra 60k damage onto our gun, right? Every crit does 60k more now. That's going to make a huge difference for this guy. So we've got a couple of mods on. You may be thinking, is there anything you can do to change it up at this point without having all these energy activators to make it a little stronger? Look at fire rate concentration here. You get 20% fire rate. This has 1% firearm attack. This has a 6.5% firearm critical hit damage. We are going to want that 6.5% critical hit damage instead of that 1% firearm attack. Whereas if you were using something like the Tamer, you're going to want to have that 1% firearm attack over your 6.5% critical hit damage because the Tamer is not a crit weapon. Yes, this stat is better than 1% firearm attack. It is better, but if you're not going to be doing criticals, it's really not. Like, that will obviously be around the same damage because it doesn't factor in those additional stats. It's only the 20% fire rate that actually affects your DPS, whereas that 6.5% and that 1% actually does make a difference depending on what gun you're using. You don't just want to go for the fire rate and extra firearm attack just because the numbers don't change. Now, because there is a socket here that has this, you're going to have certain, especially with all the weapons, certain sockets you don't really need. I wouldn't, if I were to, I'd probably need to put 8 catalysts on this. I could change this slot and I may do that. I think I may prefer that. But as of now, right, see this? Firearm crit rate, look how much increase that DPS is. Do you really think that this is going to give me an extra 50k DPS when something like these didn't affect it? Like, it's not going to happen, right? You're getting reload time modifier. How is a reload time modifier increasing my DPS by 54k, right? I get the more bullets you shoot, the more damage you do, but that's not what you're going for. There is reload cancelling. You don't need a reload speed because at 25%, especially for this gun now, it is, like, for the Tamer, it's not too bad because the Tamer is like an 80% reload cancel, something like that. But for a gun like an SMG that has a 25% reload cancel, you don't really need these reload time modifiers. I just haven't changed mine out. Ideally, you would actually replace this with like a weak point damage because weak point damage and critical damage, like they stack multiplicatively. So you don't really need to worry too much about reload speed in a gun like this. I just haven't got around to changing the socket yet. I'm honestly not too sure if I'm going to. I do want to test a couple things out. We do still use weak point damage, but we use this, weak point insight. We want firearm critical rate and we want weak point damage, right? Because it does stack multiplicatively. You're going to do way more damage, right? 1082 DPS. Just that's saying we only get a 1000 damage bonus. Let's see if we only get a 1000 damage bonus. 190 and 46k, right? That's a lot more than 1000 DPS. That's more than 1000 damage per shot, never mind damage per second. That's a big increase in comparison to it saying you only get 1k. It's not that simple. So we'd like to have some weak point mods on. For the majority of your weapons, you are going to want weak point mods, but for other weapons, you aren't going to want crit. You don't want to stack them on every weapon. You do want to be more specific. If your weapon isn't crit, you can still build weak point, just don't build crit. We are going to bring in some more mods now. One like this. Firearm critical hit damage 120% and reload time modifier negative 30%. Increased by 98,000. This was like, what, 50k? So if we were to take that off, that's 50k gone. That's technically, you know, reducing the 30% time modifier. This mod's basically redundant, right? We're only using it for crit rate. That's why I do question if I need it, but because I use this, I have a reload time modifier negative, so that's not great. This kind of balances itself out. If you want to work it like that, like I am, go for it. But you can always change this. Take a 30% reload speed hit. It's not a big deal in the Thunder Cage because you can reload cancel at 25%, and then we'll test this out. See how much more damage we're doing now. 310k. A lot more damage, right? And if we spam this, right? If we just spam a bunch of shots in her, we get a lot more crits at this point, you know. No matter where we're shooting her, we always get a couple of crits per magazine. Compared to when you start it with no crit rate, you barely get any crits. You're maybe getting 1 or 2 crits from a magazine, whereas generally you're getting quite a few crits here, you know. That's almost every shot there is a crit. The last slot, right? This is a general good build already. There's only one more thing we need to change. And this last slot, what do you want to go in there? That definitely comes down to your personal preference. For me, I generally like to run elemental mods. I have them all upgraded to 14 cost. It maxes me out completely. But you can go with other mods. A mod like Fire and Fiesta would definitely help in that slot as well. Whereas the elemental mods are mainly just for boss, and so if you don't really think you're going to be doing much boss, and get yourself Fire and Fiesta, that's what I would recommend. It means you get a lot more shot. It's unlike reload time where it is based on reloading, but it gives you like infinite ammo for a certain amount of time after you reload, and that will make you a lot stronger. I don't have it yet, but we're up to 340k DPS now with a Thunder Cage. Like that is quite a big upgrade. And then by the time you end up having your mods maxed, you want to have your energy capacity up, you know, you want to have your crystallization catalysts in to get more module slots to be able to half the cost, so you can actually fill up your gun with a bunch of maxed mods, and this will increase your damage by quite a bit. On paper, 5x your damage almost, but it does more than that, you know. The Thunder Cage has an explosion ability that does millions of damage. So where it really comes into play is if you have multiple enemies, you're able to obviously hit with a Thunder Cage and do you see that 4 million there? A 4 million damage with a Thunder Cage. That's where you're going to notice the big differences, because those crits are going to transfer over to all of that damage. Now, obviously, that's not the same with every gun, but now you know how to at least build your guns, how to get the maximum DPS out. If anything changes, if I'm going to be working on a lot more mods, obviously I don't have a lot of them. I'm going to try and get them all. We'll test them all out. We'll, you know, make some new builds. I need to get more weapons. I'm really trying to focus on getting myself some more energy activators. I literally haven't got a single drop. Not one. So I can't really build many other weapons. That's the end of the video. I really do hope you enjoyed. It is a hot oil day. I am sweating. If you need me to go a bit more in depth about some of the additional stuff, it's definitely possible. I can definitely do it for you. This is just sort of what you need to know for modding, why you shouldn't use crit if it's not a crit weapon, why you shouldn't use like trigger rate if it's not a trigger rate weapon, you know. But if you want a more in-depth about specific mods, specific builds, I know this game doesn't have combos like Warframe, so there's no like elemental mixes or nothing like that, but there is still elements. Are they necessary? Not in particular. I like them for bossing, but if there's anything in this that you didn't like that I did, feel free to change it. This is just a general especially for new players who aren't quite as used to the Warframe modding system as someone like myself would be. This is just a general guide on how to increase your damage by 5 to 10 times, you know. Depending on the weapon you have, you'll get different results. For this gun, we definitely went up a lot, right? It was quite a hefty chunk. But yeah, that is all for today's video. I really do hope you enjoyed. If you learned anything, if you got any help, hit the like and subscribe button. But that is all for today, and I gotta love yous and leave yous. Have a nice day.